Communication is a process of exchanging messages, ideas, or thoughts between and among people. Its main goal is to connect or bring them closer to each other by virtue of understanding. However, the flow of communication may be affected by several factors, resulting to what we call communication breakdown. Good day, dear learners! How are you doing today? Have you had enough sleep or taken your meal before watching this episode of learning? Great! Make sure you're all geared up so you can be able to follow the discussion throughout or digest every bit of information or knowledge I am going to impart or share to you today. Are you excited? Oh, how I love the energy, and I hope you keep that up until the very end of this video. Before we start, let me ask you a few questions. All you have to do is answer yes or no, and please be honest in answering. Is the place where you're at or seated noisy? Are you feeling good today? Is there something that makes you preoccupied today, like meeting deadlines and thinking how you can accomplish the activities given in your modules? Are you suffering from any physical pain? Are you willing to learn new things from different perspectives or cultural landscape? Can you hardly speak and understand English language? How did you find the questions? Where do you think these questions are leading us? Correct. Communication breakdown. Our lesson for this episode, dear learners, is all about barriers to effective communication. Let me therefore present to you our lesson objectives before we start. Define communication breakdown. Identify the different barriers to effective communication. And recognize and address these barriers to effective communication in order to avoid communication breakdown. You know that communication has different elements which are essential in its success. However, there are several factors that may arise which can possibly affect its flow, resulting to what we call communication breakdown. But wait, what is communication breakdown? Communication breakdown is defined as a failure to exchange information, resulting to a lack of communication or understanding. This failure to exchange information is brought about by what we call barriers to effective communication, which may stem from the very same elements or from any external factors we cannot control. Let's go back to the questions asked and identify what barrier of communication each tries to point out. Number 1, is the place you're at or seated noisy? If so, you are experiencing what we call physical barrier or noise. Physical barrier refers to any external or environmental stimulus that distracts us from receiving the message sent by the speaker. Examples include crowd noise or noise from people talking too loud around you, beeping of jeepneys, thunder, deafening sound of a karaoke near you, and the like. So, if the place you're at is noisy, you better leave the place and go somewhere silent or away from the distracting noise around. That way, you'd be able to stay focused on watching this episode. Same is true when you're engaged in a conversation. You'd be able to focus whether as a sender or a receiver. The second question is, are you feeling good today? Is there something that makes you preoccupied, like meeting the deadlines and thinking how to accomplish the activities given in your modules? If there's any, you are experiencing what we call psychological barrier or noise. Psychological barrier or noise refers to a type of interference that occurs within our minds as we try to communicate with others. This is also called a mental barrier. If the person is not mentally or emotionally sound, then he or she might not be able to communicate effectively, either as a sender or a receiver. Psychological noise may also result from preconceived notions we bring to conversation, such as stereotypes, reputations, biases, and assumptions. These notions will make us blinded to the original message. Other examples include depression, anxiety, preoccupation or lack of attention, and the like. Also, when you have wandering thoughts due maybe to a reason like you're not interested in the topic, or because the speaker talks too slow or fast, or his or her voice is too soft or loud, that's psychological noise. Any mental interference that distracts communicators in engaging actively and attentively in a conversation is psychological barrier or noise. So if something is bothering you right at this moment, I advise you better take a break and come back when you're ready. Or stop thinking about something you know you cannot change or control and focus on what matters. Focus on watching this episode. What? Kidding aside, you got to keep your mind focused and never get distracted. You know, sometimes we just have to let things be, and that way we'll be able to move on, to move forward. What? Where were we again? I'm sorry, I got distracted. I got carried away. So you see, if you're not into the topic, whether as a sender or receiver, or if you're busy thinking about something other than the topic itself, tendency is you won't be able to stay focused. We don't like that to happen, of course. Moving on to the next question. Are you suffering from any physical pain? Are you suffering from headache, extreme pain, or hunger? If you are, then you are experiencing what we call physiological barrier or noise. Physiological barrier or noise refers to any distraction due to a physiological function that interferes with communication. Examples include migraine, fatigue, feeling like defecating, nauseating, or peeing, and physiological effects from a medicine that affects the way you think or feel. Imagine yourself experiencing any of these during the flow of communication. Do you think you can be able to communicate effectively? Probably not. Of course, you will feel uneasy that you want to terminate the conversation right away, even without having achieved understanding or consensus yet. Best thing you can do is to excuse and give yourself some time alone until you're ready and feeling comfortable. That's when you will most likely be able to communicate effectively. Next question is, are you willing to learn new things in different perspectives or cultural landscape? Are you not? If you're not in any way willing to at least accept other people's point of view, because you are highly influenced by your cultural background, beliefs, values, and traditions, then you are experiencing what we call cultural barrier. Culture is socially transmitted behavior, arts, architectures, languages, signs, symbols, ideas, beliefs, norms, traditions, rituals, customs, etc., which are learned and shared in a particular social group of the same nationality, ethnicity, religion, etc. Cultural barriers pertain to prejudices, ethnocentrism, or anything that people encounter regarding their cultural differences, intrinsic values, belief, and traditions in conflict with others. People's cultural background in general affects the way they interpret a message or the way they communicate and relate to others. It makes communication difficult as the mindset of people of different cultures are different. The language, signs, and symbols are also different. In Germany, an Indian who is used to being very indirect with his communication might find their direct way of speaking rude. Being direct is a part of the German culture and it is reflected in the way they communicate. Communication therefore shapes culture and vice versa. Another example I can give is the one I gave in my previous lesson. The monogamous and the polygamous on topic about marriage. The two may not agree at the very idea that once a couple got married, either sex should not engage in extramarital relationship. The monogamous would say no to extramarital relationship, while the polygamous would say yes to it. One's being monogamous and polygamous is highly influenced by his or her cultural background. And so therefore, communication breakdown is most likely to occur between the two, the monogamous and the polygamous. In case you're faced with the same situation, the best thing you can do is to be accepting and open-minded. We need to accept the fact that there are things we cannot change to people, especially in cultural matters. All we got to do is to listen and see things in their perspective. We don't need to change their views or persuade them to accept ours. Sometimes we just have to resort to cultural understanding, like, unity in diversity, as they always say. Next question is, can you hardly speak or understand English language? How do you find my accent? Do I use jargon, slang, or words you find peculiar? Can you understand me so far? If you do not, due to my accent, use of words you find peculiar, or simply because you don't understand English language, then you are experiencing what we call linguistic barrier. Linguistic barriers pertain to conflicts regarding language and word meanings. Words carry denotative and connotative meanings, and sometimes some words we know do not simply apply or are not used in a certain region or part of the globe because of geographical factors. Example, we don't say elevator in the UK or somewhere in Europe like Ireland and Scotland using British English, but instead we say lift. We also don't say apartment in the same countries, instead flat. Dustbin, not garbage can. Wardrobe, not closet. Football, not soccer, and many more. Also, meaning of words and symbols or the feelings we attach to a certain word or label may vary depending on culture. Well, you certainly know what I mean. And in case you're faced with the same situation, what I mean, confronted with some linguistic barriers, you can say, I'm sorry ma'am, sir, what do you mean by this and that? Or, patawad po, hindi ko naiintindihan ng wikang Ingles. That's completely fine. Take note, the goal of communication is understanding. So whatever language we use, for as long as we understand each other, that's communication. There are other types of barriers similar to what has been discussed. Verdeberg in 1991 classifies these barriers into three kinds: external noise, internal noise, and semantic noise. External noise is similar to that of the physical or environmental noise. This refers to sight, sound, and other environmental stimuli which distract us from getting the message across or understanding its meaning as intended or meant. Examples include the noise heavy rain creates, barking of the dog, attention-drawing activities around, people yelling at each other in the neighborhood, and the like. Internal noise, also called psychological noise, is similar to that of emotional barrier. This refers to internal distractions or thoughts and feelings that interfere with meaning. Examples include disappointment, frustration, fear, depression, anger, nervousness, extreme mood of happiness, and overexcitement. Semantic noise, which is similar to that of linguistic barrier, refers to the alternate meanings aroused by a speaker's symbols. This means that the listener or receiver may have another meaning of a word in his or her mind. This is affected or influenced by his or her native language and the culture he or she is brought up in. Examples include using idiomatic expression, excessive technical terms or jargon, crooked grammar, and the like. To avoid this type of barrier, be sure to practice audience analysis first, especially if it's for public speaking or mass communication, because the type of audience you're gonna have determines the jargon you will have to use. So those are the different barriers to effective communication. We don't know when these barriers may arise in the flow of communication, but the best thing to do whenever they do is to recognize and find a possible way to address them. The key to effective communication is not the absence of these barriers, but by being adaptive, accepting, open-minded, sociolinguistically competent, and focused. Feels like I want to talk about communicative competence, but that's a whole new topic to discuss. Well, I'm gonna be talking about ways or specific strategies to avoid communication breakdown in my succeeding videos. So if you haven't subscribed yet to my channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can keep updated for more videos to come. That's it for now, dear learners. I hope you did enjoy this session with me, Teacher Paul Jan Gamaru, and thank you for listening and see you again on our next episode of learning.